Well, hello! Coming up in a second, something coming from HappyModel, one of my favourite suppliers of very small quads. But just before we get into it, a quick reminder, please like or dislike this video if you didn't like it. Comment down below, don't forget to subscribe and click that little bell icon which tells you when I'm uploading videos. So what do we have here? Trends in FPV tend to, well, be trends. So just a few days ago I looked at the Full Speed RC Toothpick, a kind of pure outside fast quad which was essentially built from the stuff they're making 2S and 3S tiny whips from. This is a similar thing. This is the SailFly X from HappyModel, who also made the very excellent Mobula7 HD quad, which I was really happy with. And they've taken most of that tech and they've put it on a regular frame. So let's see what is in the box here. Well, a set of 1, 2, 3, looks like 2 sets of props. I'm guessing these are the 65mm ones that seem to be popular. We've got a battery strap and a screwdriver, a spare canopy. Now this comes with 2 canopies. So the one it comes on here, and you will see the angle for the camera is fixed. This red canopy, which is just a TPU printed mount, and you can see the little bits of stringy bits in the print. Nice and squidgy, the TPU. This is set at 30 degrees. But they've also included this one in the box, this purple one, and this is set at a 40-degree angle. So should you think that's not fast enough, put this one instead and you'll be like this fast. There's also a little bit of TPU under here for the battery. And the battery they provide is a high voltage 300 milliamp 3S battery, which slots under there, like so. But it has got some slots here, so if you don't want to use this, you could use the battery strap instead to use different batteries. But wow, it's tiny. These motors are the smallest things I've ever seen. These are 1102 9000 kVs and they're just so diddy. You would not believe how small these are. It's just incredible. But the rest of the stuff is fairly much like you'd get on the HappyModel tiny whips. So the Crazy BF4 comes out again because they use that and everything. This is the FreeSky version, which has its built-in SPI receiver. Not fantastic range on those, but in something this size and this light, it's quite welcome. There is enough room to put something in if you want to go external though. It's a little 5 amp ESC board with a burst of 6 amps. You wouldn't imagine you could get too much more out of these motors, would you? And it's a fixed 25 milliwatt VTX, although the 40 channels are changeable via smart audio, and it uses their own camera. So that's the big difference with HappyModel. They use their own stuff. Everything else seems to use the Cadex. This is their own camera, and it's tiddly and goes in that little tiny mould there of this TPU mount. This is interesting itself. Just for a change, the USB connector is just here on the top. So this is pretty nice looking, isn't it? So let's get it onto the Betaflight configurator, set it up and go and fly it basically, because I'm interested to know what this is going to go like. I thought I'd just show you this bit, is what happened when I plugged in. Because we've got a translucent body in that TPU shell, it lights up and really is quite effective, especially in just slightly lower light. Okay, so let's connect in, and I've already done the setup, but I just wanted to whiz you through what I'd actually changed and what it looked like. So nothing touched here. We've got TBS Smart Audio already set up as UART1. In the configuration we already had motor stop activated, which I like to see. There's an 8K loop, and we already had FreeSky D selected on the SPI support. For the reasons that I'm leaving it as D, see this video in the corner which shows some problems using FreeSky X, i.e. the D16 protocol. Much safer to go with the D8 version. And down here we've just got LED strip, of which I don't actually know if there is one, unless there's something under the hood there, and the OSD, which are on by default. This would be helpful, wouldn't it? Let's put that on, and then we can make the beeper sound. Power and battery, this was set to 4.3, but this comes with a high voltage battery which would have a cell voltage of 4.35, so I've upped that to 4.5, so that way the cells divide properly and you don't get Betaflight misreading things. PID tuning wise, they've got something a little bit weird here in which they upped the RC rate.
You had some really weird max velocity things going on there. Some of them were above 1,000, some below. I've just evened them all out to 1,000 because that's what I generally fly with. Receiver, I've obviously bound this up and I've added my RSSI channel on aux4. Again, to learn about how I did my mode and my RSSI, watch this video that's going to pop up in the corner, and that will explain it. And my modes are pretty standard. Arm, angle, horizon, obviously acro, which isn't there. I've got beeper, air mode on a switch, and turtle mode. And on the OSD, I was pleasantly pleased to find out that the sort of layout I choose with things around the corners was present here. They just had things in a slightly different order, and they had the whole current sensing stuff here, so I've just rearranged that very slightly. That's about it. You'll notice it's running Betaflight 4.0.0. This is a pre-release version, so if you put this on the very latest version of the configurator, you'll see weird stuff on the screen. Here's another video to look at about that one. But yeah, if you get this, just roll the Betaflight version back or upgrade the Betaflight firmware you're using. Anyway, that all looks good, so let's get on with the flying part. Well, here we are at last, and if you're thinking, well, it wasn't too far along, we were just talking about Betaflight. I've had hold of this for 2 weeks, but because I was doing other reviews finishing off and then the weather turned awful, it's been sitting there taunting me, saying fly me when I couldn't. But now we've got a weather window. It's blue skies at the moment, rain later, but right now let's get some lipos in this thing and let's just get it flying. Right, so off we go on the Maiden. And instantly, although I'm only up to sort of 30% on the throttle, I'm thinking, this is fast. I say it felt fast. It felt slightly out of control. And at the time, I was just thinking, wow, this is so fast. It's out of control. It is fast, but one of the things that does create this impression of speed and a slightly out of control feeling is the lens distortion you get. So if you see, as we go into the corners, you see there's some distortion right in the extent of the screen, so it's good in the middle, but it's a bit weird around the outsides, and that gives kind of a false impression of not just speed but how far things are away. And because I haven't seen a lens like this for a little while, this is like one of those old all-in-one sort of VTX cameras. It's a little bit of a weird feeling at first. That said, it is still quick. You'll see that we're barely getting up to 50% throttle in a straight line at this camera angle. And I tried to do some speed runs into the GoPro, and this is what it looks like. And I have to say, just look out for the thing that looks like a really fast insect. Now, I won't say too much about this first battery, but two significant things happened. One is I just clipped a tree here, and then we had a bit of a sort of bad noise. I could feel vibrations in the throttle, so I figured I'd done something. Two, I was just absolutely pumped after this first flight, so I decided to record my thoughts about it. Holy moly, I've got to say that's one hell of our first battery. Yeah, you try and take it easy on this thing, it's not happening. It is fast, it just wants to go. The only problem, receiver and range. Getting low telemetry just over here behind me, so it really doesn't like going behind, but if you look where the antenna is, it's just here, look, it's not in the best position ever. And you can see it drop off pretty fast down there, so there's not much range on the receiver. That is a bit of a shame because it wants to really go. Oh my goodness. I felt after that crash we were getting a little bit of wobble. I think it was the balance lead hitting it, and there's a little bit of flutter when you go high throttle. You can just hear it. There's a sort of thing. I think because these, if I can show these props are very flexible, and when you put a lot of RPM in them, I think they're getting a little bit of flutter. But yeah, the props, tiny little nick out of one of them, I might change it over. But it's fast, it's fun. Let's put enough battery in and see. Okay, just seen the reason for that noise when I removed that prop to have a look at it, and it seems that the little motor shaft is just slightly bent there. If I rotate it, you can hopefully see it's over on one side there, which is not great. That wasn't much of a hit to bend a shaft like that, but if it's that soft, I'll have a go at bending it back just to try and get these props lined up, else it's not going to fly very nicely at all. Well, pair of pliers equals a fairly good field repair. That seems nice and straight compared to the other prop now. They're in line at least, so hopefully that should fly okay. Battery number 2. So we're all happy that that prop is good and has absolutely no problems at all now. So I decided the best thing to do would be to slam it straight into the floor to test it properly. Bit like that. Bizarrely on this one, there was absolutely no damage whatsoever. Not even a damaged prop. The quad just got a bit wet because the grass was wet. You know, give it a quick shake out, give it a wipe down, and it was good to go again. So yeah, it was a bit of a weird one because I didn't think I had a big hit into the tree, but that bent a prop, and then I thought I had a big crash into the ground and nothing bad happened. I guess it just depends what bit you hit. So those prop shafts are just 1 mil in diameter, and a few people have mentioned they're quite soft. So that is something to be aware of. Again, you can bend them back again, but it would perhaps be nicer to have 1.5 mil shafts, which wouldn't bend quite so easily, and then you wouldn't have this problem. That said, after I fixed it up with a pair of pliers, it seemed to be flying absolutely fine. Now, I was trying to do some acro stuff here, and you'll see me sort of looking around trying to find a place, because what I'm doing is trying to look for a nice safe place to do an inverted yaw spin. But if you look at the camera and how it handles the light, it is not the best. So when we're going into the sun, we're finding that the floor details are blanking out. It's too dark underneath. So we haven't got much of a wide dynamic range on this camera. This is a problem for me here because I'm above some trees, and I really do need to know what's down below. It's not so bad if you're in a field and you know you've got some height, but when you're dealing with the proximity of trees, that bit's quite important. Again, this is a bit of an old style camera, if you like. I mean, I do like the camera in terms of the colour reproduction. I think that is better than the Caddx EOS 2, which often gets bundled in this sort of quad. But I don't like the lens distortion, and I don't like the way it darkens the ground details when you hit the light like that. That said though, I am still having a blast on this quad. What I'm doing here is just making sure I can actually fly it in a sort of slow manner, just by pointing up a bit. You'll see that the throttle is very low, and if you were down low proximity, it would still feel, you know, fast, whoop fast outside. As soon as you hit that throttle and bend forward, you're away. Like I said, this is the first of, I think this is the 30-degree camera angle, or the 35, and there is a 40-degree in there. I don't know if batteries have been invented yet that can take the amount of punishment that are handed out when you try and fly this thing as fast as possible, because even at this angle, it was really getting the batteries drained when you step on the gas. So even more angle means you'd be able to put even more throttle into it. Most of the time I'm not getting above 50%. This is from battery number 3, and this is me actually sort of trying to put some throttle on, and look at the battery sag it's getting. Again, we're only getting up to about 60-70% when we can, and I've already drained this down to 9.9. So, you know, if you were doing some sort of race, because, you know, it's designed as a race quad, normally you do, like, you know, 2 minutes and how many laps can you get. You certainly wouldn't be able to full throttle for very long, not with this sort of battery. And you see it's recovered right back up to 11. Now we've stopped doing that. So for my last battery, this is battery number 4, I went out with a 2S battery. Now, somebody in the toothpick review said they'd probably only fly these sort of things on 2S, and what was the performance like. And the answer is it's a lot more manageable. So if you're worried about it running away with you, certainly 2S is fine. I did find it a little bit sluggish though. I could get the throttle all the way to 100%, but feel that it still had some more speed to give me if I was using 3S. And it is a little bit of a trade-off here, because you're not getting the full speed you should be able to at the 3S battery. With those props are definitely getting this sort of flutter when you're full throttling on a 3S high voltage battery. And obviously you don't get that so much on the 2S, but you do not get that top end, and you do not get that punch. It's interesting because I've just come back from Mini Airshow 5, and I was chatting to Andy RC about, we were comparing toothpicks. We both looked at the full speed one, and he thought it flew much better on a 2S. And I know he's getting this quad soon. I said check it out, because I think it's a little bit lacking on 2S. It doesn't have that ultimate speed or punch that you get on the 3S. As I said, I think it's fair to say you get some issues on the high end of 3S, but overall I prefer to fly on 3S. That said, if you're interested in this and your space is more limited, or you were slightly worried it might be a bit too quick, then 2S is going to be your friend here. To be fair, you get a perfectly good flight on 2S, but coming from the adrenaline rush of flying this on 3S and barely hanging on for dear life, coming over to 2S was like a bit lackluster. It just felt a bit like we're living life in slow motion again. That said, overall I had a great fun and massive smile on my face from flying this quad and all 4 batteries.
Well, there you go, that was the SailFly X. I've got to say, I'm absolutely loving this class of drone. This tiny little, it's like Whoop stuff, but not in a Whoop sort of style. It's Whoop tech, but it's in a normal, X-frame and everything, and it is rapid. It does feel so quick. Normally when I fly these sort of quads, the sort of 2S, 3S, tiny Whoop styles, or even the small quads, I'm like, really, you've got to keep it close in, you've got to keep it very much proximity, and that gives you an impression of speed. This is really the first one where I thought, I'm going to need a bigger space to fly this, because it really wants to go. I mean, there are some downsides. I will give you my list of niggles that I think could be better with it. First, the camera. There's 2 things I don't like about the camera. One is the distortions, and you can really see it if you're sort of coming over and you want to line up with a tree, and so the tree's here and you're sort of going over and doing this, and you will notice that the tree is not where you think it is when you're used to a normal camera that doesn't have that sort of distortion. It's something you get used to, but I found it quite hard to line up on the right place there, and it gave me a bit of a weird feeling, like it was coming through too fast, and it was all a bit strange, but you get used to it. The thing that was more of an issue with the camera for me was the sort of darkness. So if you're going into the sun, it goes much darker below. I mean, this used to be a problem with all cameras until we got like the wide dynamic range sort of things. So it would be really good to get that fixed, or some different camera. I mean, they've used a much smaller camera than like the Cadex, and it fits in this tiny little canopy. But yeah, I do not like it when it darkens like that, especially when I'm over trees, because I'm like, how much space have I got before the trees? I don't know, it's all dark down there. The receiver, the good old SPO receiver, normally absolutely fine. Having that much range on a small quad, you sort of poodle along and it's not a problem. Because this is fast and wants to go really quick, I want more range. So one thing I might look at doing is putting something else in there. I think you can put something else in these boards, and you've certainly got the space in there. You can poke a finger in there, so that means you can certainly put an XM Plus in there. I'll check that out for later. But there's plenty of good things with it. I smiled a lot. It's not often that I feel like mid-flight that I have to talk to the camera and say, wow, that was really amazing, because I was really pumped. I had the adrenaline going. It was a real white knuckle ride, that first battery, but it was really good. It was just fun to thrash it around, and that's what it's all about, really. Just absolute fun, just getting a couple of trees, being able to zip it up and down, and do anything you like with it. And it's got so much power. The power to weight ratio is crazy. Most of the time on a 3S high voltage battery, in a straight line, I couldn't get beyond 50% throttle, because I'd be looking at the floor. Now, certainly I could put that other canopy on, which would put the camera up higher, but I'd wreck the battery pretty quick. But this, for just doing like acro stuff and going up and over trees and around and being stupid, this is ideal. I suppose if you were doing like proper little races on these, you might want to put the 40-degree one on. You would need new battery technology, I feel, to be able to really do that quickly. But perhaps you'd have more of a technical course where you'd have to sort of, corner all the time. But yeah, so much fun, so much power. You just blast up anywhere, and you can just let it fall, and within microseconds you can just power out of it. That's fantastic. I mean, yeah, it's super fast. I'm not saying, this doesn't replace a 5-inch in terms of fast, but for this size, I mean, look at it. It is so fast for this size of quad. You would not expect this out of it. And because I'm flying in places, I think, oh, this is good for a small thing. It's suddenly that place has shrunk down because this thing just wants to rip. The other thing is, this is pretty. I don't normally mention the price, but you can get this for about $88 One of the reasons I mentioned the price is it tends to change a lot. But with that, you get like a couple of sets of props, an actual battery, because those batteries aren't particularly cheap. And it's all ready to go with the SPI receiver. I mean, I don't particularly like the receiver, but you're ready to go and fly in it. And anybody worrying about regulations, this weighs, without a battery, 35.8 grams. You put a battery in it, it gets to all of 60.8 grams. No one is going to look twice at something like that because it looks like a little toy. It does not behave like one. It's absolutely awesome. I certainly wouldn't describe this as like your first quad. I don't think it's a beginner machine. It is pretty quick. You can fly at 2S, you can put the rates down, but it's got like a set, quite high camera angle, and it's not. I don't think it's particularly friendly to beginners. But if you've had a couple of quads before, you will not have a problem with this. It's an absolute blast. So yeah. This is the SailFly X from HappyModel, and thanks so much for HappyModel for sending this to me. There'll be some links for various places you can get this. But for now, I hope that's been helpful, and I will catch you next one. Bye!
Well, you've made it to the end of the video, so thanks once again for watching. If you like what you saw, then please consider subscribing, and if you really like what you saw, then be sure to check out the link to my blog for a variety of ways in which you can help support this channel.